Evening team. A few people have noticed that I look exhausted at the moment. And you might have also noticed that I do a lot of these recordings from my bed. And I just wanted to address that in this video. This isn't really a blog sort of channel. I don't mean to turn this into like a vlog of any sort. But this subject is kind of relevant to the sort of things that I talk about. Self-development, personal development, personal growth, spirituality, the spiritual journey, the spiritual path, health and fitness, all of that sort of stuff. Well-being, mental health, that sort of ballpark. This is relevant to that. So I'm coming out of the tail end of a... If I could list all of the catastrophes that have befallen me this last 3 years, it'd be a long video. We'd be here for quite some time. So I won't list everything, but we're looking at pretty much every single thing that could go wrong for someone has gone wrong for me over the last 3 years. We're looking at financial, we're looking at physical health, we're looking at mental health, we're looking at social, we're looking at livelihood, everything. There isn't a single area that has not had some form of catastrophe befall it in my life over this last 3 years. So I just realised this doesn't sound like the most motivational video at this point, but stay with me. Stay with me, it will be. There's a motivational point in here somewhere. It might take some digging, but I'm going to find it, alright? So that's why I look exhausted. Because it's only over the last like 2 weeks, I would say, 2, maybe 3 weeks, that I've actually been able to sleep. Because one of the main issues that I've encountered this last 3 years is this issue with back pain. I've had this chronic back pain, which has been excruciating at times. And most of the time is bad enough that I can't sleep properly. But through a huge amount of physio, strengthening, stretching, meditation, medication, lots of things, finally I'm in a position where I can finally sleep again. And so because I'm getting back to a little bit of sleep, my energy is beginning to return, which is why I'm able to start putting out more content. You might have noticed that I've been putting out a lot more content, but as usual, maybe my ambition gets the better of me a little bit, and overconfidence is a slow and insidious killer, let me tell you. So maybe I've been overdoing it a bit, and that's why I'm starting to exhaust myself again. Who knows, eh? But this brings me to this very interesting subject of what is the purpose of all this suffering. Over the last 3 years, I've endured quite a lot. And naturally, at some point, you have to start questioning why. This is a very common question that's been asked philosophically, religiously, spiritually. What is the purpose of all of this? Quite a famous question, really. What's the purpose of this? And naturally, being a fairly philosophically minded person, being a spiritually minded person, I've been searching myself. But to be honest, I've kind of arrived at the conclusion that sometimes there is no purpose. And I wonder if that's the lesson that I needed to learn. It's actually a really interesting quote from the American Office, when one of the characters at the end, they have this like huge disaster. I haven't watched the whole thing, I've only seen that clip. I don't know why it struck me. It's one of these ones where there are spiritual clues everywhere. The clues are everywhere. Little pearls of wisdom can be found in a lot of pop culture. And one of the characters turns to the other after this huge disaster and says, "I don't understand. What was I supposed to learn from this?" And the other character turns to him and says, "Not everything is a lesson. Sometimes you just fail." And that always struck me, but that didn't strike me as a pessimistic notion. That didn't strike me as particularly negative or nihilistic or depressing. That sentiment, not everything is a lesson. Sometimes you just fail. It's that feeling of, well, that's just life. That this is how it goes. And in a way, that helped me to see things as it's not that big a deal. I wouldn't consider the last 3 years to be a failure by a long stretch, but the sentiment holds true. The sentiment of it, the suffering might not necessarily be a lesson, and that is the lesson. Paradox. But there are things along the way that you do learn. You learn things about yourself when you're in a period of great strife, a period of great misery, a very testing time, a very difficult time. You learn things about yourself that you didn't know before. For one thing, it's been pretty hellish at times. We're talking physically, mentally, emotionally, everything. And I didn't relapse into alcoholism. I didn't. So that's something, right? That's got to be worth something. If there is a list out there somewhere where at the end of your life you are held to account for something, I would like to think that is on there somewhere. It's got to count. Even though I know ultimately even that doesn't matter. But still, as I move forwards in life now, there is a layer of confidence there, a layer of strength that I might not have had before, because I know I can stay sober even during the worst times that I didn't even think were possible. I didn't think that things could get that bad. Anyway, and I remained sober with AVRT, right? And so that's validation. This method works. What more do you need to know? I've learned that you can operate on 0% energy. And that is very strange to me. Spiritually, I've never felt stronger spiritually. That might not make much sense, because physically I'm weak, mentally I'm weak right now, but spiritually I've never been stronger. And what I mean by that is there were long periods of time over the last 3 years where I was operating on 0% energy, physically and mentally. I felt like a robot at times. I felt like I was watching an NPC just play through just run its programming. And I didn't know that was possible. So spiritually, that also confirms a lot of the meditative practice that I've been doing, which suggests that you can take your hands off the wheel and just allow things to unfold. Because your body and mind can run out of energy, but your spirit is infinite. Your soul is infinite. And it's not subject to the same rules as the physical world. Your spirit, your consciousness remains conscious always. It's not subject to the same rules. It doesn't have an energy meter. Our mind and our body has an energy meter, but your soul, your spirit, there just isn't one. It's not even that it's got an infinite energy meter. There's no energy meter. It's not an energy. It's the clear blank void behind everything. And that experientially became true for me. So this has been a true dark night of the soul, because that's the other thing I wondered if that's why. If there is a why, there isn't always a why, but if there is one, this period of difficulty has stripped away a lot of the things that I was invested in, my ego was invested in. I was very invested in my physical training and my job, and had all these ideas and this whole image of who I was and what I was and how life was going to go. And the last 3 years has thrown that all totally into question. And it's incredible when all of that is stripped away and taken away and you're left with what remains. You realise, oh, what a relief. Because what remains is life itself. Pure, open, empty consciousness. And it turns out you didn't need anything. You didn't need anything. You didn't need the job. You didn't need the identity to live. That's the key. That's the key. A lot of people are suffering unnecessarily because they are seeking an acceptable identity. It can't be done. An identity is an illusory entity. It is not real. It does not actually exist. How do we know this? Because it can change overnight. If it's so malleable, if it is so ephemeral, if it is so transient, how can we find one that's going to satisfy us? How can you find an identity that's going to remain stable and solid and satisfying and fulfilling for the rest of your life? You can't. You can't, just like you can't build a house on water. It doesn't work like that. And we're making a dreadful mistake by trying to find acceptable identities for ourselves that are going to remain permanent for the rest of our lives. It simply doesn't work like that. So without identity and my narrative stripped away, without anything, and on top of that being in a lot of physical pain, which forces the body and mind into total presence, because you don't feel previous pain or future pain, you feel the pain in the moment. I was almost forced into a very spiritual state for a long period of time. Yeah. So if there are lessons, which there might not be, that's got to be one of them. Because despite all of that, despite everything, despite all of the catastrophes, all of the disasters, all of the setbacks, I'm basically having to pick myself up and start again. You know, this isn't my first time at the rodeo, you know, sadly. It's just different this time. But I've been here before, you know, picking yourself back up and starting again. I've been here before. I know the ropes now. Which might be another reason why these things happen, so that you can learn how to pick yourself back up after you've fallen. How you pick yourself back up after you've had a stumble. And what a stumble. Boy, oh boy. But after all of that, despite everything, I'm remaining optimistic. And how is that possible? All the evidence says, give up. All the evidence, if I was identified with my narrative, if I was identified with my ego and identified with my story, I'd be depressed right now. There's no way I'd have any enthusiasm or motivation for life. There is no way. If I was identified with my past, if I was identified with the ego structure and identified with the story leading up to today, I would be in despair. I'd be despondent. I'd be saying I did that whole physical transformation of becoming a personal trainer, losing all that weight, doing all this stuff, only to end up in literally bedridden right now, exhausted. What's the point of it all? But I'm just not thinking like that. Why am I not thinking like that? Because I'm not thinking. You don't need thought. You don't need it. You don't need thought. I'm not interested in any of the past. Today, I'm just happy. I'm not even happy for any particular reason. I just am. And I'm optimistic for the future because I know that no matter what happens, no matter how dark it gets, no matter how difficult the circumstances, no matter how tough it's going to be, and it would be very naive to think that, you just get through that period of suffering and you'll never have another one. Of course there's going to be more. Albert Camus said, "In the depth of winter, I found in me an invincible summer." And I think that's what I found. The invincible summer. However, it'd be nice to get out of the depth of winter. That would be nice. I think I'm due a break, but we'll see. We'll see. It's not up to me. And after all of that, even though my mind and body, I noticed all of these things falling away, and there was catastrophes and disasters and just horror. It's just one thing after another. Do you ever get that? You ever just realise one thing after another? Something's going on here. Although there was something going on terrible in the outside world, something wonderful is happening on the inside. Something marvellous. Something truly, truly marvellous is happening. And I'm not clear what it is yet, but I just know that it's good. And so it's onwards and upwards, and more videos to come. I'm working on tons of them. And hopefully, I'll be starting some live streams soon. But I try not to make plans, because there's no such thing as the future. God's favourite joke is a man with a plan. I shouldn't have even mentioned the live streams. What was I thinking? Now I've said that, right? YouTube's going to scrap the whole live streaming service that it does. That's what'll happen now. That'll happen tomorrow. Shouldn't have said it. Tempted fate right there. Anyway, that's why I look so tired. That's why I look exhausted. And please don't worry. Please don't worry, and please don't be concerned for me. I never post anything because I'm after sympathy or pity or anything like that. Never. The only reason I would ever post anything and talk about hardships or difficulties that I'm going through is to try and demonstrate that it's possible to go through these hardships and struggles, whatever it is that you go through, that you can still do it with your chin up, with your shoulders back, with your chest up, and say, all right, yeah, here we are. This is life. I'm not here to complain. I'm not here to moan. I'm willing to face whatever life throws at me, because it means we get to live. It means we get to be alive, right? And it's part of the deal. It's part of it. It's part of the moment you start drawing breath on this earth, you've kind of entered into this contract in life, and it's worth it. Whatever you struggle with, whatever you suffer with, it's worth it for the ups when they come. And if you've been so very low, the highs are going to be so very, very high. That's everything I have for you today, team. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe. Try to get my subscribers up to that magical 1,000 mark. We'll see. We'll see. Take care. Be well. And stay present.